This video is made for entertainment purposes only.
My name is Dr. Marcus Chen, and I need to tell you about the day we found something in the Antarctic ice that changed everything we thought we knew about life on Earth.
I'm a paleoclimatologist. I study ancient climates by drilling ice cores, cylinders of frozen history pulled from miles beneath the surface. Each layer tells a story. Volcanic eruptions, meteor strikes, the rise and fall of civilizations. But nothing in my 20 years of research prepared me for what we discovered 3,000 meters down in the Vostok Basin. They told us it was a weather station malfunction. They said the readings were impossible. But I saw the thermal signature myself, a pocket of biological heat where there should have been nothing but frozen silence for hundreds of thousands of years. What we pulled from that ice wasn't supposed to exist. And when it opened its eyes and spoke to us in a language older than human civilization, asking if the burning sky had finally stopped, I realized we hadn't just discovered a new species. We'd found a survivor of Earth's last apocalypse. This is that story. And I'm telling it now because the world needs to know, before it's too late. The wind screamed across the ice shelf like a living thing, carrying crystals sharp enough to strip flesh from bone. Even through 3 layers of thermal protection, I felt Antarctica's hatred for human presence. This continent didn't want us here. It had spent 50 million years perfecting its isolation, and every gust reminded us we were trespassers.
Chen.
We've got the core stabilized. David Reeves, our drilling engineer, waved from the entrance to the main habitat module. His beard was white with frost despite the 15 seconds he'd been outside. I checked my oxygen readout, still green, and trudged toward him through knee-deep snow. Inside, the habitat hummed with the controlled chaos of a successful extraction. Our team of 12 had been working this site for 6 months, part of an international effort to pull the deepest ice core ever retrieved. The Vostok Basin, buried beneath the Russian research station of the same name, held ice nearly 4 kilometers thick, a frozen archive stretching back 800,000 years. But something had gone wrong 3 days ago. Dr. Yuri Volkov, the Russian glaciologist who'd been instrumental in getting us access to this site, stood beside the core analysis table. His face had that look again, the one he'd worn since the anomaly first appeared on our deep scan radar. Marcus. He never called me Dr. Chen, despite me asking repeatedly.
Russian informality, he claimed.
You need to see this before we go further. The core section lay on the table, still partially encased in its thermal sleeve. Even through the protective covering, I could see it was different. Ice that old should be clear blue-white, compressed by millennia into something harder than concrete. This section looked organic, darker, like someone had spilled coffee into the ancient layers. What am I looking at? I moved closer, squinting through the sleeve's transparent panel. Carbon, said Dr. Amira Okafor, our biogeochemist. She'd been with the United Nations Climate Initiative for a decade, one of the best in the field. Her dark eyes reflected the weird discoloration in the ice. Massive concentrations. And not from volcanic activity or meteor impact. Then what? I asked, though something in my gut already knew I wouldn't like the answer. Organic carbon. She pulled up a spectral analysis on her tablet. Hair. Skin cells. Lipids consistent with mammalian tissue. The habitat went quiet except for the constant hum of generators and life support. That's impossible, David said flatly. Nothing survives at these depths. The pressure alone. I said consistent with mammalian tissue, Amira interrupted. Not identical to anything in our database. The protein structures are off. Close to primate, but with significant deviations. And the preservation is perfect. Not decomposed. Not fossilized. Preserved. Yuri pulled back the thermal sleeve entirely. I stopped breathing. Embedded in the ice, clearly visible now, was hair. Thick, rust-colored hair attached to what looked unmistakably like skin. Not the desiccated leather of a mummy, but skin with the faint translucence of something that had, until very recently in geological terms, been alive. How deep was this core section? My voice came out steadier than I felt. 2,847 meters, Yuri said quietly. Ice Age dating puts this layer at approximately 127,000 years old. just before the Eemian interglacial period. The last major warming event before our current era, I said, more to myself than anyone else. My mind raced through the implications. When global temperatures spiked by several degrees, and Antarctica briefly supported some vegetation along the coasts, Amira finished. But nothing like this. Nothing that could support megafauna this far inland. Maybe it didn't live here, said Elena Vasquez, our youngest team member, fresh from her doctorate at Cambridge. Maybe it died somewhere else and got transported. By what? David challenged. There's no geological evidence of water flow at these depths. No sediment layers. Pure ice. Then how did something with hair end up nearly 3 kilometers under the surface? Elena shot back. The question hung in the frozen air. We need to extract it, I said. Everyone turned to look at me. Carefully. If there's even a chance of recovering intact DNA, this could rewrite evolutionary biology. But we do it by the book, sterile protocols, contamination controls, document everything. Eerie nodded slowly. The Americans will want to know immediately. He was right. Our funding came from a consortium of nations, but the U.S. National Science Foundation held the primary contract. And they had very specific rules about biological discoveries, especially unprecedented ones. Let's see what we have first, I said. Then we make calls. It took us 8 hours to properly extract the core section and set up a sterile examination chamber. We converted our secondary research module into a makeshift clean room, using our entire supply of medical-grade filters and UV sterilization equipment. If we contaminated this specimen with modern bacteria, we'd compromise any biological analysis. The section of ice weighed nearly 200 kilograms. We centered it on a specialized table equipped with heating elements and drainage channels. The plan was simple: slow, controlled thawing while maintaining strict temperature monitoring. What we expected to find was remains. Tissue samples. Maybe bone fragments if we were lucky. Evidence of some unknown species that had somehow wandered into Antarctica during the brief warming period 127,000 years ago and been preserved by a freak freezing event. What we didn't expect was for the ice to be hollow. Wait, stop the thaw, Amira commanded suddenly. She was watching the ultrasound scanner we'd set up to monitor the melting process. There's a cavity. A significant one. I moved beside her, studying the screen. She was right. The tissue wasn't scattered through the ice, it was concentrated around a central void space, almost like. It's curled up, Elena breathed. Like it's sleeping. The image on the ultrasound was unmistakable once you saw it. The fetal position, arms wrapped around knees, head tucked forward. A posture of conservation, of waiting. That's not possible, David said, but his voice lacked conviction. We were all staring at the same impossible thing. Resume thawing, I ordered. But slowly. Quarter-degree increments. I want continuous monitoring of core temperature, melt rate, and gas emissions. If we detect any unexpected chemical changes, we stop immediately. The next 3 hours were the longest of my life. The ice melted layer by layer, revealing more of what lay inside. Hair, definitely hair, thick and russet-colored with hints of amber. Then skin, leather-tough but still showing the fine wrinkles that indicated it had once been supple. The preservation was beyond anything I'd seen, beyond anything that should be possible. Amira took tissue samples as sections became exposed, her hands rock-steady despite the magnitude of what we were uncovering. Each sample went into sterile containers for later DNA analysis, properly catalogued and sealed. David maintained a running video log, his camera capturing every stage of the revelation. Elena monitored environmental conditions, calling out readings that stayed stubbornly consistent. No unusual gases, no toxic releases, just water vapor and trace prehistoric atmosphere. And Eerie watched the ultrasound, tracking the form as it gradually emerged from its frozen prison. Marcus, he said quietly. The chest cavity. I'm seeing movement. I was beside him in 2 steps. That's not possible. Ice crystals shifting as they melt. No. He pointed at the screen. Look. Regular rhythm. Every 47 seconds. Consistent displacement pattern. I watched. Waited. Counted. At 47 seconds, the form's chest expanded slightly. Contracted. Expanded again 47 seconds later. It's breathing, Elena whispered. No, I said firmly, even as my pulse hammered. It's thermal expansion. Gas pockets expanding as the temperature rises. We're seeing patterns because our brains are wired to find them. But I didn't believe my own words. The thawing continued. An arm became fully visible, longer than human proportions, heavily muscled, ending in a hand with 6 fingers instead of 5. A leg, bent and pressed against the torso. The curve of a massive skull, at least 30% larger than modern humans. Core temperature rising, Amira called out. Approaching 0 Celsius at the cavity wall. Adjust heating elements, I ordered. We need to slow this down. The creature's chest expanded, held, and it coughed. The sound was wet and desperate, like someone breaking the surface after nearly drowning. Water sprayed from the melting ice. The form convulsed, one massive arm breaking free from the last restraining ice with a crack that made us all jump back. Jesus Christ, David gasped. The arm moved. Not the jerking motion of thawing tissue, deliberate movement. The 6-fingered hand flexed, stretched, reached toward the edge of the table as if searching for purchase. It's alive, Elena said, stating the impossible truth. It's actually alive. The creature's breathing accelerated. Still that regular rhythm, but faster now. Every 20 seconds. Every 15. The chest heaving as ancient lungs remembered their purpose. I found my voice, though it came from somewhere far away. Full documentation. Record everything. Elena, get the medical monitoring equipment. The ice around the skull gave way, and the creature opened its eyes. I've tried to describe those eyes to colleagues, to government officials, to the UN panel that eventually formed around this discovery. Words fail every time. They were amber, not the pale yellow-brown of human hazel, but deep, layered amber like Baltic fossilized resin with insects trapped in golden suspension. The pupils were vertical slits, contracting immediately against the LED lights of our makeshift examination room. But it was what existed behind those pupils that stopped my heart. Intelligence. Not animal awareness. Not the clever problem-solving of a great ape or the trainable responses of a dolphin. This was the gaze of something that thought, that understood, that recognized us as thinking beings in return. The creature's head turned, slowly, as if moving through water, tracking each of us in the room. Its neck was thick, heavily muscled, supporting that massive skull with obvious effort after 127,000 years of frozen suspension. Frost still clung to the rust-colored hair covering its face, melting now into rivulets that dripped onto the examination table. "Nobody move," I said quietly, keeping my voice level despite the adrenaline flooding my system. "David, are you still recording?" "Every second," he confirmed, his voice tight with controlled panic. The creature's mouth opened. The jaw structure was wrong for human, too pronounced, too powerful, but the teeth, when visible, weren't the fangs of a predator. Flat molars designed for grinding plant matter, with modest canines. An omnivore's mouth. It tried to speak. The sound that emerged was like nothing I'd heard before, a deep, resonant vocalization that seemed to come from the chest rather than the throat. It rumbled through the air, making our equipment vibrate on its mounts. The creature stopped, closed its eyes as if concentrating, then tried again. This time, distinct syllables emerged. Rough, separated by labored breathing, but unmistakably structured language. Ha, ka, thuum. Eerie grabbed my arm. That's not random vocalization. That's speech. Consonant-vowel patterns, deliberate articulation. "I know," I breathed. The creature's eyes opened again, fixing on me. One massive hand. I could see now that each finger ended in a thick, blackened nail, possibly adapted for digging, lifted from the table. It moved toward its own throat, touched the skin there, then gestured outward in what could only be described as a universal sign of difficulty. It was telling us something was wrong with its voice. "Water," Amira said suddenly. If it's been frozen for over 100,000 years, its tissues are still adjusting to liquid state. The throat, the vocal cords, they need hydration. I nodded slowly, never breaking eye contact with the creature. Elena, can you get water? Room temperature, sterile if possible. We have distilled water for the equipment cleaning, Elena said, already moving to the supply cabinets. Will that work? It'll have to. The creature watched Elena move across the room with apparent interest but no aggression. Its breathing had stabilized now, roughly every 12 seconds, deeper than human respiration but steady. When Elena approached with a metal cup of water, the creature's attention shifted to her. She stopped a few feet away, clearly terrified but holding steady. Dr. Chen. Slowly, I coached. Hold it out. Let it see your offering. Elena extended the cup. For a long moment, the creature simply stared at the offering. Then, with movements that were becoming more fluid as its body temperature normalized, it reached out and took the cup. The hand dwarfed the container. I estimated those fingers could palm a basketball with ease. But the grip was careful, almost delicate. The creature lifted the cup to its mouth and drank, its eyes closing briefly in what might have been relief or pleasure. When the cup was empty, it set it back down on the table with surprising gentleness. Then it looked at me again, and spoke. Nook, you. Thank you. The words were badly pronounced, the phonemes rough and approximated, but the meaning was unmistakable. It had heard Elena and me speaking English. And in the space of minutes, it had attempted to reproduce our language. Oh my God, David whispered. It's mimicking us. Language acquisition on the fly. Not mimicking, I interrupted, watching the creature's eyes. Understanding. There's a difference. I took a breath, trying to keep my voice steady. Can you understand me? The creature's head moved in what might have been a nod, jerky, unpracticed, but clearly affirmative. My name is Marcus, I said slowly, pointing to myself. Marcus. We found you in the ice. Do you understand? Ice. I made a gesture that I hoped conveyed coldness, freezing. The creature's expression changed. The massive brow furrowed, and something that might have been pain or sorrow passed across those alien features. It touched its own chest, the hair that was lighter than on its arms, more of a rust brown, and made a sound. Ka-ren. Its name? Or its species? I glanced at Eerie, who was frantically taking notes. Karen, I repeated carefully. Is that your name? Another nod. Then the creature, Karen, pointed at me. Mar-cus. The simple exchange hit me with unexpected force. Names. The foundation of personhood, of individual identity. This wasn't a specimen or a discovery. This was a person. Yes, I said, feeling tears prick unexpectedly at my eyes. Marcus. Karen's mouth moved in what might have been an attempt at a smile. Then its expression shifted again, becoming urgent. It looked around the room, at the metal walls of our habitat module, the equipment, the LED lighting. Its breathing accelerated. Where is this? Where is this? You're safe, I said, though I had no idea if that was true. You're in Antarctica, in our research station. We found you in the ice and... Karen's reaction was immediate and violent. It tried to stand, the sudden movement tipping the examination table. David lunged to steady the equipment while Amira pulled Elena back. The creature, easily 7.5 feet tall when fully upright, swayed, clearly weak from its long hibernation but still powerful enough to dominate the space. On-tark-tai-ka? The word was clearly a question, but the pronunciation was better now, as if Karen's vocal apparatus was remembering how to function. Its eyes were wide, searching. Antarctica, I confirmed, staying calm despite my racing heart. The southern continent. The ice. Karen made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. It pressed one massive hand against the wall as if to steady itself, and when it spoke again, the words came faster, still rough but increasingly clear. How long? How long, frozen? The question I'd been dreading. I glanced at Eerie, who nodded grimly. Someone had to tell it. We dated the ice layer you were in, I said slowly. Approximately 127,000 years. You've been frozen for over 100,000 years. Silence. Even the constant hum of our generators seemed to fade. Karen's legs gave out. It slid down the wall to the floor, that massive frame suddenly looking small and broken. Its head dropped forward, hair hanging like a curtain around its face. The breathing became irregular, quick gasps that might have been shock or grief. Karen. I approached slowly, keeping my hands visible. Are you all right? Stupid question. How could anyone be all right after learning they'd lost 127 millennia? The creature's shoulders shook. When it looked up, I realized with shock that tears were streaming down its face. Real tears, the same saltwater composition as human crying. The amber eyes were filled with such profound sadness that I felt my own tears fall in response. All gone, it whispered. All dead. Every one. I'm sorry, I said uselessly. I'm so sorry. Karen wiped at its eyes with the back of one massive hand, a gesture so human it hurt to watch. Then it seemed to gather itself, focusing on me with renewed intensity. "The burning sky," it said, the words coming clearer now. I said, "Stopped? The fire from above. Burning sky." I repeated, "I don't understand. What fire?" Karen gestured upward, toward the ceiling, but clearly meaning something beyond. "The sky. It burned. The sun. Wrong. Too bright. Too hot. Killing everything." My mind raced. "You're talking about solar radiation? Increased ultraviolet exposure?" "Yes," Karen seized on the word. "Radiation. The shield broke. The sky, no protection. Plants died. Animals died. We dying. The ozone layer," Amira breathed. "It's describing an ozone depletion event." I turned to her. "Is that possible? 127,000 years ago. We've theorized about natural ozone depletion during the Eemian period," she said rapidly. "Volcanic activity, cosmic rays, even meteor impacts could have temporarily damaged the ozone layer. If it was severe enough, everything would have been exposed to lethal UV radiation," Eerie finished. "Plants would die first, then herbivores, then." "Everything," Karen confirmed, clearly following our conversation with that uncanny intelligence. "We tried to hide. Deep caves. Underground. But not enough. Not enough food. Not enough time. So you came here," I said slowly, understanding dawning. "To Antarctica. During the warming period, before it froze over completely." Karen nodded, and when it spoke again, its voice carried the weight of ancient memory. "The elders, they knew. Studied the sky, the stars, the ice. They said, if we sleep in the ice, the cold would preserve us. When the sky healed, we wake." "Induced hibernation," David said, his scientific mind already working through the implications. "But how? No mammal can survive freezing like that." "We not like you," Karen said, gesturing at us. "Different. Our blood changes. In cold, it protects. Keeps cells alive. Sleeping, but alive. Cryoprotective compounds," Amira murmured. "Like Antarctic fish species that produce antifreeze proteins. But on a massive scale, throughout the entire body." Karen struggled to its feet again, more steady now. It moved to the small window in our habitat module, just a reinforced porthole really, and looked out at the endless white landscape of Antarctica. When it turned back to us, the question in those amber eyes was clear even before it spoke. "The burning sky. Is it stopped? Can we go home?" How do you tell someone that they're the last of their kind? That the world they knew has been buried under geological ages? That everyone they loved has been dust for longer than human civilization has existed? I opened my mouth, searching for words that wouldn't be cruel. And the emergency alarm started screaming. Red lights flashed through our habitat. The alarm, designed to alert us to critical system failures or environmental hazards, was something we'd only tested during drills. "What's happening?" Elena shouted over the noise. David was already at the communications panel. "Multiple proximity alerts. We've got vehicles approaching fast. Looks like, Jesus, at least 6 heavy transports and 2 helicopters inbound." "From where?" I demanded. "The nearest station is Vostok, and they're not due for supply runs." "These aren't supply vehicles," Eerie said grimly, looking at his own tablet. "Military transponders. American military." My blood ran cold. How did they know? "Our samples," Amira said quietly. "When I sent the preliminary DNA analysis to the main server for processing, the data goes through satellite uplink. If anyone was monitoring, they've been watching our research," I finished. "Of course they have. Anything unusual gets flagged automatically." Karen had backed away from the window, its massive frame tense and alert. Whatever language barriers existed, the meaning of alarms and flashing lights was universal. "Danger. What do we do?" Elena asked. "If the military wants to take it." "Not it," I snapped. "Karen. And we don't let that happen." "Marcus, be realistic," David said, though his face showed he hated the words. "We have no authority here. If they want to take Karen to a secure facility." "Secure facility?" I rounded on him. "You mean a lab where they can dissect it? Study it?" "This is a sentient being, David. It has language, culture, memories. And it's the only surviving member of a species we didn't know existed," he shot back. "The scientific value alone." "No." The voice was Karen's, deep and resonant and absolutely firm. We all turned to look at it. The creature stood at its full height, and despite having been awake for less than 2 hours, there was no mistaking the resolve in its posture. No more cages. No more experiments. "Cages," I repeated. "Karen, what do you mean?" But there was no time to answer. Through the porthole window, I could see the first of the vehicles cresting the ice ridge. Massive all-terrain transports designed for Antarctic conditions, moving with aggressive speed toward our station. "They'll be here in 5 minutes," Eerie reported. "Maybe less." I made a decision that would probably end my career and possibly land me in federal prison. "Karen, can you run? Are you strong enough?" Those amber eyes met mine. "Why you help? You study me too." "Because you're a person," I said simply. "And persons have the right to choose what happens to them. So I'm asking, do you want to go with them, or do you want to run?" Karen looked at each of us in turn. Me, then Eerie, Amira, David, finally Elena. Whatever it saw in our faces seemed to satisfy some internal question. "I run," it said. "But where?" "All ice. All cold. No home left." "There are other research stations," I said rapidly, my mind racing. "Some independent, not military. We can get you to one. Contact the international community before." "Dr. Chen." David's voice was quiet but strained. "What you're suggesting is theft of a biological specimen from an international research site. Career suicide doesn't begin to cover it." "Then go," I told him. "All of you. Tell them I acted alone, that I forced you." "Don't be stupid," Amira interrupted. "You can't move something Karen's size across Antarctica alone. You'll both freeze in an hour." She turned to Eerie. "The old Russian supply route. The one they stopped using 3 years ago. Does it still have emergency shelters?" Eerie's eyes widened. "You can't be serious. That route is unsupported, unmapped in sections." "Does it still have shelters?" Amira pressed. "Yes," he admitted. "Every 20 kilometers. Basic supplies, fuel, communication equipment. But then that's our route." She looked at me. We take the backup transport, the one kept for emergency evacuation. It has enough fuel to reach the first shelter, and we can leapfrog from there until we reach Dome C. The French station. They're not American, and they've always been more interested in international cooperation than military control. This is insane, David said. But he was already moving toward the equipment lockers. Elena, help me load survival gear. If they're going to commit career suicide, they might as well do it without freezing to death. Elena's face was pale, but she nodded. How long do we need to stall them? 10 minutes, I said. Maybe 15. I'll handle it, Eerie said firmly. I'll tell them we need to stabilize Karen before transport. That moving it too quickly could cause biological shock. It's even true, just not the way they'll interpret it. Karen watched this exchange with clear confusion. You all help? Risk? For me? Yes, I said simply. Now come on. We need to move fast. The Antarctic wind hit us like a physical wall the moment we opened the habitat's exterior airlock. Even through my thermal suit, I felt the cold trying to find weaknesses, to steal the warmth from my body and leave me as frozen as the landscape. Karen, wearing only the remnants of ice melt moisture on its rust-colored hair, seemed unbothered. You're not cold. I shouted over the wind as we ran toward the emergency transport, a tracked vehicle designed to carry 6 researchers across hostile terrain. Born in ice, Karen called back, its English improving with every sentence. Cold is home. Heat is death. That explained the Antarctic hibernation site. They hadn't just been seeking preservation, they'd been returning to their natural element. Amira was already in the driver's seat, warming the engine. David threw supply containers into the cargo area. Food rations, medical supplies, fuel canisters, everything we might need for a journey across one of Earth's most unforgiving environments. They're at the perimeter. Elena's voice crackled through our helmet radios. She'd stayed behind with Eerie to maintain the pretense of cooperation. Eurie's talking to them, but they're not happy about delays. 5 minutes, maybe less. We're moving, I responded, helping Karen into the transport. The vehicle groaned under its weight, easily 300 pounds of muscle and bone, but held. I climbed in beside it while David sealed the cargo and jumped into the passenger seat. Go! I shouted. The transport lurched forward, treads grabbing ice, and we accelerated away from the habitat complex. Through the rear window, I could see the military vehicles reaching the station perimeter. Tiny figures in cold weather gear spilled out, and I knew Eerie and Elena were about to face some very angry officers. They'll be all right, Amira said, reading my expression in the rear-view mirror. Eurie's Russian military background will help. They'll posture, threaten, but ultimately, he's a foreign national and she's a junior researcher. You and I are the senior scientists. We're the ones they'll want. Comforting, David muttered, checking the GPS coordinates. Routes programmed. First shelter is 23 kilometers northeast. At this speed, about 90 minutes. They'll follow, I said. Those helicopters can't fly in this wind, Amira interrupted. Not safely. They'll wait for conditions to improve, which gives us maybe 6 hours before they can pursue by air. The ground vehicles will follow our tracks, but we have a head start. Karen had been quiet, watching the landscape rush past with an expression I couldn't quite read. Now it turned to me, those amber eyes intense. You give up everything for me. Why? I thought about how to answer. Because it's right. Because you're a thinking, feeling being, and you deserve to make your own choices. Because... I hesitated, then continued. Because humanity has a long history of treating things we don't understand with cruelty instead of compassion. I'd like to believe we can do better. Your people before, Karen said slowly. The humans. 127,000 years ago. We knew them. Small tribes. We taught them. Fire. Shelter. How to survive ice. I stared. You taught early humans? You had contact with our ancestors. Yes. We called them The quick ones. Fast to learn. Fast to grow. Fast to spread. Karen's expression darkened. When the burning sky came, we helped them. Showed them deep caves. Gave them our knowledge. But not enough survived. Not enough of anyone. How many of you were there? David asked, turning in his seat. Your people, the Sask, as you call yourselves? Not Sask, Karen corrected. That, close but not right. We are Sakon, the people of snow and stone. Before the burning, maybe 10,000. Across all the world. Small groups. Hidden. We prefer quiet. Not like quick ones, who talk and build and spread. 10,000, I breathed. Across the whole world. That's such a small population. We lived long, Karen explained. Hundreds of your years. Did not need many children. Lived in balance with the world. But the burning sky. Its voice broke. So fast. So much death. The elders said maybe 300 reached the ice. Maybe 300 sleeping, waiting for the sky to heal. The math was brutal. 300 individuals of a species going into suspended animation, hoping to survive an extinction event. And we'd found exactly one. Karen, I said gently. We've been drilling in this area for months. We've mapped the ice extensively. If there were others hibernating nearby, we would have detected them. I know. The creature's voice was hollow. I know I am alone. Last of the people of snow and stone. Last to remember the world before. Last to carry the old language, the old ways. It looked at me. You ask why I run from your military? Because I remember cages. I remember experiments. What do you mean? Amira asked sharply, taking her eyes off the terrain for a moment. Before the burning, Karen said. Some of the quick ones. They stopped seeing us as teachers. Started seeing us as things to own. To study. To cage and hurt and cut open to see what inside. The massive hands clenched into fists. Some of my people, they were taken. We heard their screaming across the valleys. We found their bodies after, mutilated, destroyed. The quick ones wanted to know what made us different. What made us strong. The cabin fell silent except for the rumble of the engine and the howl of wind outside. That's why you chose ice, I said softly. Not just to preserve yourselves. To hide from us. Yes, Karen confirmed. The elders said, the burning sky would kill the cruel quick ones. Maybe kill all of them. When we woke, maybe the world would be empty. Quiet. Safe. Or maybe new quick ones would grow. Better ones. Ones who remembered compassion instead of cruelty. And instead you woke to find us immediately trying to take you to a military facility, David said bitterly. Some improvement we've made. Not all, Karen said, looking at each of us. You choose different. You risk for me. That is new. That is hope. The GPS beeped. First shelter, 10 kilometers, Amira announced. We'll stop there, refuel, reassess. Maybe we can. The radio crackled to life, cutting her off. Dr. Chen, this is Colonel James Morrison, United States Air Force. I know you can hear me. The voice was calm, professional, and absolutely implacable. You are currently in possession of a biological asset of extreme strategic and scientific importance. You are also in violation of about 15 different international research protocols. I strongly advise you to stop your vehicle and return to base immediately. I picked up the radio handset, my heart hammering. Colonel Morrison, with respect, we're not in possession of an asset. We're accompanying a sentient being who has the right to self-determination under international law. A pause. Then, Dr. Chen, let's not play semantic games. Whatever that creature is, it's been frozen for over 100,000 years. It represents biological data that could revolutionize our understanding of evolution, adaptation, survival. It has a name, I interrupted. Karen. And it's not a specimen or a data source. It's a person. A person. The colonel's voice carried clear skepticism. Dr. Chen, I've read your preliminary reports. This creature, Karen if you prefer, could hold the key to suspended animation, to surviving extreme environments, possibly even to extending human lifespan. You're talking about knowledge that could save millions of lives. By taking one, I shot back. By imprisoning a sentient being, by treating it like a laboratory animal. We've been down that road before, Colonel. We used to justify slavery with similar arguments. Scientific advancement. Greater good. The rhetoric changes, but the cruelty stays the same. Another pause, longer this time. I understand your ethical concerns, Dr. Chen. I do. But this isn't a decision you get to make alone. This is a matter of global importance. Every nation on Earth has a stake in this discovery. Then let them decide, I said. Bring it to the United Nations. Convene an international panel. But don't just take Karen to a black site laboratory and pretend it's for the greater good. That's not. The colonel stopped himself. Dr. Chen, you're asking for a political process that could take months while we have an unprecedented biological discovery that needs immediate study and preservation. What if there are others like it's still frozen? What if we can learn something that helps us combat climate change, cure diseases, push the boundaries of human capability? What if there are others? Karen's voice was loud enough to carry over the radio. The colonel must have heard it. Is that the creature speaking? Morrison's voice had changed, carrying a note of wonder despite his military discipline. Yes, I said. Karen wants to know the same thing you do. Whether there are others of its people still sleeping in the ice. But it won't find that answer in a dissection chamber. Nobody said anything about dissection. Didn't you? I challenged. That's what immediate study means. Tissue samples. Blood work. Organ analysis. Maybe you'd keep it alive, maybe not. But either way, Karen becomes a thing to be examined rather than a person to be known. The radio went quiet. Through the windscreen, I could see the shelter coming into view, a small prefab structure designed to keep researchers alive in emergencies. We were almost there. When the colonel spoke again, his voice had changed. Softer. More human. Dr. Chen. Marcus. I have orders. I have a duty. But I also have kids. 2 daughters. And I think about what kind of world I'm leaving them. What kind of choices I'm making in their name. He paused. I'm going to do something that'll probably end my career. I'm going to give you 12 hours. 12 hours to reach Dome C, to get Karen to the French station where there are international observers, where this can become a UN matter instead of a military one. After that, I can't protect you from the chain of command. Why? I asked, genuinely surprised. Because you're right, he said simply. We've been cruel enough. Maybe it's time to try compassion. Morrison out. The radio went dead. We made it to Dome C in 11 hours and 40 minutes. The journey was brutal. 3 shelter stops, 2 near misses with crevasses, and 1 terrifying moment when a storm almost flipped our vehicle. But Karen proved invaluable, its knowledge of ice and cold helping us navigate conditions that would have killed us otherwise. During the long hours of travel, Karen told us about its world. The Sakon culture, built around patience and observation. Their philosophy of minimal impact, of living as part of the world's cycles rather than dominating them. Their stories and songs, passed down through generations that lived for centuries. We knew the earth breathes, Karen said at one point, while we huddled in the second shelter waiting for a storm to pass. Long, slow breaths. Ice comes, ice goes. Hot, cold, hot, cold. We lived through many breaths. Watched the world change and change again. The quick ones. Humans, you live so fast, you forget the earth breathes. You think now is forever. We're learning, I said. Finally starting to understand climate change, ecological cycles. Not fast enough, Karen said sadly. I see the signs, even after short time awake. The ice here, wrong temperature. Wrong texture. Melting too fast. The air, too much carbon. The earth is breathing out, warming, and you are making it worse. Another burning sky. Different kind. Slower. But just as deadly. Which is exactly why some will argue we need to study you, David pointed out. Your people survived an apocalypse by adapting. That knowledge could save us. Could, Karen agreed. But will it? Or will you cut me open, learn my secrets, and use them only for your powerful ones while the world burns? Knowledge is not enough. You must also have wisdom to use it right. When we finally reached Dome C, the French station was ready for us. Colonel Morrison had been true to his word. He'd contacted the station director, who'd immediately escalated to the French Antarctic Authority, who'd brought in the UN Environmental Program, who'd convened an emergency session of international observers. By the time we drove through the station gates, there were representatives from 17 nations waiting. And the choice of what happened next was, finally, not just mine to make. The debate lasted 3 days. Karen sat through all of it, hours of scientists arguing about research protocols, ethicists debating personhood definitions, politicians posturing about national interests. The creature listened to everything with that unsettling patience, occasionally asking clarifying questions in English that improved with each passing hour. On the third day, after yet another heated exchange between the American and Chinese delegations about who had rights to study this discovery, Karen stood. The room fell silent. You talk about me like I am not here, Karen said, its voice carrying clearly through the conference room. Like I am thing to be owned, divided, studied. But I am here. I am listening. I am thinking. I am feeling. Does this not make me person? Dr. Rashida Osman, the Kenyan representative and bioethicist, leaned forward. Karen, no one is suggesting you're not a person. But you're also the last surviving member of a species we didn't know existed. Surely you can understand the scientific importance. I understand, Karen interrupted gently. I understand you are curious. I understand you want knowledge. I understand you think my body holds secrets that could help you. All this I understand. It paused. But tell me, when you find last survivor of anything, is your first thought, how can I cut it open to learn from it? Or is your first thought, how can I protect it, honor it, let it live in peace? The silence was profound. The Sakon had a teaching, Karen continued. When you meet something you do not understand, you have two choices. You can approach with open hands or closed fists, with curiosity or fear, with desire to learn together or desire to control. Every species, every tribe, every person makes this choice. And the choice tells you nothing about what you meet. It tells you everything about who you are. Dr. Heinrich Müller, the German representative, cleared his throat. What would you have us do, Karen? What do you want? I want to live, Karen said simply. I want to see the world that grew from the ashes of mine. I want to walk in forests and mountains, swim in oceans, see if any places I remember still exist. I want to learn about the quick ones, about humans, and what you became in 127,000 years. I want to share what I know, teach what I can. But I want to do this as free person, not as prisoner, not as specimen. You want complete autonomy? The American representative asked skeptically. No monitoring, no protection, no scientific observation? I did not say that, Karen replied. I understand I am strange, dangerous, maybe, to your world just by existing. I am willing to compromise, willing to have watchers, willing to give blood, hair, whatever you need for study that does not harm me, willing to answer questions, share knowledge, but as equal, as person making choice, not as thing being taken from. I watched the representatives exchange glances. This was unprecedented territory. No international law covered the rights of a 127,000-year-old sentient non-human. It was Dr. Osman who finally spoke. I propose we recognize Karen as a person under international humanitarian law. As the last surviving member of the Sasquatch people, Karen would be granted protected status similar to endangered indigenous populations. Autonomous living arrangements under UN supervision, with voluntary cooperation for scientific research. Karen would essentially become a citizen of the international community. That's absurd, the American representative sputtered. You can't just grant citizenship to... To what? Dr. Osman cut him off sharply. To a being that speaks, reasons, demonstrates cultural knowledge, and has spent 3 days patiently enduring our debate about its fate? Tell me, Ambassador, what definition of personhood does Karen not meet? The ambassador had no answer. The vote took another 2 hours of procedure and debate. But in the end, by a margin of 14-3, the international panel recognized Karen as a person under UN protection. When the gavel fell, Karen looked at me with those amber eyes shining. You chose compassion, it said quietly. Not all of you. Not easily. But enough. It is more than the old quick ones gave us. It is hope. I'm 73 years old now, writing this from my home in New Zealand. My career survived the Antarctica incident, though it took a decade for the controversy to die down. I'm remembered in scientific circles as either a hero or a traitor, depending on who you ask. I prefer to think of myself as someone who made a choice when it mattered. Karen is still alive, still teaching, still learning. The creature has spent the past 3 decades traveling the world, documenting everything, comparing the Earth now to memories 127,000 years old. It's written 5 books, collaborated, really, since its written English needed help, about Sasquatch culture, ancient climate patterns, and what it calls the long view of survival. It lives alone mostly, in a remote valley in Patagonia that reminds it of home. But it maintains contact with a small group of researchers, myself included, who continue to study Sasquatch biology through voluntary, non-invasive means. The discoveries have been extraordinary. Karen's blood does contain antifreeze proteins unlike anything in modern biology. Its cells have redundant DNA repair mechanisms that could revolutionize cancer treatment. Its metabolism can shift between states in ways that might help humans survive long-term space travel. All of this learned through cooperation, not coercion. Through compassion, not cruelty. Last month, I received a message from Karen. An invitation to visit, to see something important. I made the long journey to Patagonia, my old bones protesting the travel but my curiosity as strong as ever. Karen met me at the valley entrance, still imposing despite the silver creeping into that rust-colored hair. We walked together to a small workshop the creature had built, half laboratory, half artist studio. I have been thinking, Karen said, about the burning sky, about extinction, about my people sleeping in ice, waiting for a world that never came back. I think about that too, I admitted. Whether others survived. Whether there are more of you still frozen somewhere, waiting. I do not think so, Karen said sadly. I have searched. Used your satellite technology, your deep scanning equipment. If more Sasquatch sleep in ice, they are buried too deep or too far. Beyond finding. Beyond waking. It paused. But I realized something. The Sasquatch do not end with me. It gestured to the workshop walls, covered in detailed drawings and diagrams. DNA sequences. Cellular structures. Reproductive biology. What am I looking at? I asked. A possibility, Karen said. Your science is advanced. Can manipulate genes, create life in laboratories. Can clone extinct species from ancient DNA. If I give you everything, my complete genetic sequence, my knowledge of Sasquatch biology, my permission, could you bring back my people? I stared at the diagrams, my mind racing through the implications. Karen, we're not there yet. Cloning is still experimental, and creating a viable population from a single individual. Not now, Karen interrupted gently. I understand. I have learned to take the long view. But someday, in 50 years, 100, could it be possible? I thought about the rapid advancement of genetic technology,
about CRISPR and synthetic biology and all the tools we developed in just 3 decades. About what might be possible in another 100 years.
Maybe, I said honestly. Maybe someday. Karen's expression, I'd learned to read those alien features over the years, showed something like peace. Then I have hope, it said. Not for myself. I know I am last of my generation. But maybe not last forever. Maybe the Sasquatch will walk the world again. Maybe they will remember the old ways and teach them to the new quick ones. Maybe they will help you learn patience, balance, the long view you need to survive. We stood together in that workshop, human and Sasquatch, looking at blueprints for a future neither of us would live to see. Thank you, Karen said quietly, for choosing compassion that day in Antarctica, for making it possible for me to live these years free, for helping your people see me as person, not thing. It is more than I dreamed possible when I went into the ice. Thank you, I replied, for trusting us, for giving us another chance to be better than we were. Outside the workshop, the Patagonian sunset painted the sky in shades of amber and rust, the colors of Karen's eyes, the colors of ancient ice. The burning sky had stopped, at least for now. But our choices would determine whether it stayed stopped. Whether we learned patience and wisdom along with knowledge. Whether we chose to approach the unknown with open hands instead of closed fists. Karen had given us a gift, not just biological secrets, but a mirror to see ourselves clearly. To see both our capacity for cruelty and our capacity for compassion. The choice of which one to embrace was, as always, ours to make. And I still hope, that we would choose wisely. Because the earth is still breathing, still cycling through its long changes. And we are still the quick ones, living fast, burning bright, racing toward either extinction or transcendence. The Sasquatch learned to survive by adaptation, by patience, by living in balance with a world that breathes in millennia. Maybe, if we listen, they can teach us to do the same. Before it's too late. Before the burning sky returns. Before we lose our chance to be the compassionate inheritors of this ancient, patient earth.